Hey y'all, I am Jaimee Dorris and you're watching Ms Congeniality TV. Have you always wanted to be a beauty queen? Or maybe you couldn't care less about a crown and just simply want to look your very best. Regardless of why you are here, welcome. In the last episode, we visited beautiful Pensacola Beach, Florida to learn the tricks of the pageant trade from Pamela Nail, Mrs. World 1988 herself. She showed us how we need to structure our days if we want to have the most beautiful body ever. If your daily habit could use a little bit of improving, that episode is for you.
You've been doing this every day since the 1980s.
In this episode of Ms Congeniality, we're talking all things platform, media, and building a personal story that gets attention. Mrs. California, Elizabeth Peace, is a powerhouse media professional.
The biggest problem pageant queens have is that they go into a media interview completely unprepared.
She helped me shape my story. I'm sure she can help you with yours. Platforms. That's a word you don't hear very much outside of pageantry, but what exactly is it? And how do you choose it? Well, today we're going to be speaking with Mrs. California 2021 Elizabeth Peace. We're going to be talking everything about platforms and then some. So this is my first Zoom interview and the only one of the entire season. Let's get started. Hey, welcome to Ms Congeniality. How are you?
Hey, I'm so excited when I get to talk to people who are very hand talkers like I am. So thanks for that.
That's one of those things I'm not supposed to be doing, but I do it anyway.
Well, I appreciate it.
Well, fabulous. Thank you for being here. I just briefly introduced you as Mrs. California 2021. You were also Mrs. Virginia back in 2016, and you have military experience, journalism experience. You help ladies like myself hone their stories and get media attention with Clique Public Relations. You are literally a powerhouse. We could talk about anything, but I want to talk about platforms.
Oh, you know what? I love my platform. It's my favorite topic. So that's, well, aside from the kids, so that's good.
Fabulous. So tell me briefly, what is a platform? What is it?
So particularly for women, but, elected officials, politicians, they also have things, they have causes that they care about, but really a platform is just something that you really care about. And for me, it's something that was very personal to our family. So for anybody who's interested in pageants or running for election, you just have to think about, what is it I care about? What gets me out of bed in the morning that I want to advocate for that no one's going to pay me to do? That's a platform.
Okay, so does a pageant woman have to have a platform?
It depends on your pageant system. So I can tell you that in the Mrs. America system, you should have a platform or a story that you can tell, or you should have something that you can advocate for so that you have something to do for a whole year. However, do you necessarily have to have one? No, not necessarily. And there are some pageants where you don't have to have one at all. And then there are other pageants where it's mandatory.
But do you think a woman should have a platform?
Yes, yes, I definitely do.
Why?
I do, because when I look at being a pageant contestant and let's say you win, what are you going to do with your year? Because hopefully it's about more than you, and it's about more than having a really pretty crown, and it's about doing something for others. And I think that for women who don't have a platform, I think it's really hard to focus your year on something meaningful and impactful. And at the end of the year to say, did I accomplish what I set out to do? If you don't have anything you're advocating for, because otherwise you're kind of just throwing, it's like throwing spaghetti at the wall and hoping it sticks. You're just throwing appearances at the wall and you're hoping that something is meaningful and that you're impacting somebody. I really think that you should have a platform.
So what's yours?
Mine is preventing child sexual abuse. I created Operation Innocence and Sergeant Bark because child sexual abuse was very personal to our family. It was something that we went through that was very difficult. And when I very first watched the Mrs. America pageants, Mrs. Idaho, Kaylee Sparling, her platform, it was very similar to mine. And then she also ended up becoming a friend of mine. And so it meant a lot to see somebody standing on stage. She ended up winning Mrs. World. To see someone standing on stage talking about something so personal but so impactful. And that same year, Austin Williams, who won Mrs. America that year, she had a platform of human trafficking. And so I was so amazed at what these women stood for, and was amazed that you could compete in a pageant to be able to talk about something like that.
Well, yeah, because it's kind of dark.
It can be. It is really hard to have conversations with anybody about a really difficult conversation like this. And what I tell people is, when they say, that's really hard to talk about, it's even worse to go through. So if we as adults can't talk about it, now imagine being a child who's had to live through it. So we have to talk about it, because when we don't, then we can't prevent it.
Wow. You are so good at this. You are so good. So I have to ask you.
It's like I've done this before or something.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. I have to ask you,
Given the fact that you've helped so many ladies with their platforms and they're getting media attention on that, what would you have to say is the worst platform that you've ever heard?
Oh, I don't know if I've heard a bad platform per se, right?
Yeah.
It's not that anybody has come to me and said, this is my platform. And I've been like, oh, no, it's not. You can't do that. And I'm sure that they exist, right? I probably just have not run into them. However, I think the worst platform is one that doesn't mean anything to the contestant. And those are actually pretty easy to spot, because when you're having a conversation with that particular contestant, it'll be very surface level. And you'll say, well, why? What's your why? What are you going to do with that? And they don't have a really good, strong answer, or their answer seems, like I said, surface level. So I do not like it when somebody has a platform because they think it sounds good.
That's so true. You helped me with my platform, Life Without Borders, and we're still building that scholarship.
Yes.
Still getting money into the scholarship as of today. Mm-hmm. So it's something that it's growing and it's getting better and better.
And you are proof that your platform does not have to be something as serious and traumatic as child sexual abuse. It doesn't have to be that. It could be fitness and health. It can be so many different things. It just needs to have meaning to you.
Coming up, Elizabeth shares some tips on getting the most out of media interviews.
Because one thing my pageant coach taught me was, don't spend time on the fluff.
Elizabeth, you really seem to focus a lot on storytelling and your platform, but a lot of pageantry is about beauty. How do you negotiate those things?
Well, so first of all, I'll tell you that the beauty part took a little bit more time to get used to, because I had been a journalist, right? So the story to me, I'm like, oh yeah, no, storytelling, I've got that. And you'll see from my social media or my Instagram posts, I'm just a storyteller, and that is how I convey what I'm thinking and what I'm feeling. And so it definitely took a little bit more for me to become comfortable with that side of myself, and to even feel like I could be beautiful. That was hard. And I think a lot of that is just because we're so hard on ourselves. Mm-hmm. And women especially grew up with society saying, this is what beauty is. This is a standard definition. And if you don't match that, which most of us don't, then you're not beautiful. And so to find the part of us that makes us feel beautiful, that's actually really hard to do.
What's been the hardest thing for you to learn to beautify yourself?
Oh, I mean, I cannot tease my hair to save my life, obviously. I can't do it. I cannot. Things that I learned when I was a print journalist, I wore jeans and flip-flops and white t-shirts. And I had a friend that told me, you have got to actually buy clothes.
Yeah.
So that was hard. And I'll tell you, I bought the wrong size. I bought 2 sizes too big because I just didn't know. You can rework your wardrobe. You can get somebody to help you. I learned what my colors were. I learned what size I was. I learned that we all have to get our clothes taken to a seamstress, even when we do buy it in our size, just to make it fit correctly for our bodies. So you can learn that. But nothing is going to help me learn how to tease my own hair. I can't do it. I cannot do it.
I love it. Well, speaking of hair teasing and beauty, when it comes to a media interview, what do most pageant ladies get wrong?
I think what they get wrong is that they think it's a pageant interview. And so they're answering in this pageant way. What is cool, though, is if they have done any kind of pageant coaching, is that they have learned that hey, I can lead this interview into what I want to talk about if I end my answers a certain way. So the pageant thing is good and bad because cool, you've learned how to pivot. That's very helpful. Unfortunately, most pageant interviews, the judges do not give you a follow-up question based off of what you just said. A journalist is probably going to do follow-up questions. And if they find a hole in your story, they're going to dig. So you've got to be ready for an actual media interview. And it is very different.
What is one thing that beauty queens should never say in a media interview?
You know, I think that you have to be really careful in interviews when you are representing a pageant system, making sure that you know what that system is about and that you have the talking points from your director before you even go into an interview is really important. But just know what you're going to say before you even go in the first place. So when I'm doing media training, one thing that we will work on is soundbite, talking point, fact, pivots. So I will have my girls, and sometimes it's guys that I'm training, I will have them writing this down before they even go in. And I've had some really great sessions with some entrepreneurs where we have spent 10 sessions honing their message and getting them ready for crucial, usually national TV spots. And by the time they go in, they're killing it. They know exactly what they're going to say, and they're so good and nothing can throw them off. The biggest problem pageant queens have is that they go into a media interview completely unprepared and they don't have those things written down, or they've tried to memorize them. And that doesn't come across very good either.
And then you end up just going, look, I've had media interviews where I'm expecting that they're going to ask me about the pageant or about my platform or about something that seems important. And then they end up asking me about my earrings or my shoes or something completely irrelevant. And then we talk about that for 3 minutes and then we're done. And I'm like, oh.
Yes. And that is where anybody who's done pageant coaching will really excel, I think, in those questions. Because one thing my pageant coach taught me was don't spend time on the fluff. And pageant judges will do the same thing. And yes, sometimes so do journalists, especially morning news. They're like, let's have fun. And you're like, cool, I can have fun, but talk about my platform. And they're like, no, where'd you get your earrings? Because it is such a foreign world to people outside of pageants. They're just like, you're 41 doing a pageant. Really? It's just, they ask you some questions that you just don't think are going to come up. Don't spend time on the fluff. 15 seconds in and out. You're like, oh, I have this really great sponsor, All Things Crown, and you can get their jewelry for $6. And then that's it, you're done.
Yeah.
They'll ask you another question.
Okay, and then move on. Okay, sounds good.
Sometimes you see queens that are just all over the place, and you're like, wait, what?
Next, we talk appearances with Mrs. California 2021.
Okay, so we are going to be moving on. Look, we've talked platforms and we've talked about building your story a little bit. We've discussed media interviews, do's and don'ts. Let's chat about appearances. Now, do you think your appearances have to go along with your platform?
They don't always have to, but I tend to stick primarily to my platform. So no, not every appearance is going to. For example, I always volunteer to read at my son's school. And then sometimes like I'll read to the younger kids and then I will give a motivational speech to the older kids. And so that doesn't have, anything to do with child sexual abuse prevention, but I do think it's really important. And sometimes I'll go to my sister queen's pageants. I just went to Texas last weekend for that. And that doesn't have anything to do with my platform. However, it does give me a good roadmap, because if I didn't have a platform and I wasn't primarily working toward my platform, then not only would I have completely been dishonest with the judges, but also that's where I was talking about the throw the spaghetti at the wall. Sometimes you see queens that are just all over the place and you're like, wait, what? You have no idea what she's doing or why she's doing it. Yeah. And it doesn't seem to have an end goal. I want to have an end goal. I want to make the most of my year and accomplish what I can toward my platform and have a goal at the end of it, because I only get to do this for 1 year. And then if I want to do it again, I have to compete again. So that part's really important to me. I also don't think photo shoots count. I don't know if
Photo
other people
shoots are
feel
not
that way.
appearances?
I don't
No?
think they are. Photo shoots are not appearances. And photo ops, like standing in front of a sign, that's no. Now maybe because you're there to volunteer or something else, sure.
Yeah.
But I'm not just going to go stand in front of the Camp Pendleton sign outside of the base and be like, here I am today. That's not an appearance. That's just a photo. So in my opinion, not that it matters, it doesn't.
So how does somebody go about getting and securing appearances?
So there's a couple of really good apps, and the one that comes to mind is justserve.org. They also have an app that you can get on your phone, and people will put in organizations that need volunteers.
Okay.
Also, not a bad way to come up with some platform ideas, because you can look at what people need and see, oh my gosh, does that really speak to me? For example, one of the organizations here, they are very involved in helping military veterans get PTSD dogs, and those dogs need to be walked. And so you can volunteer to walk the dogs, and I love dogs. So, I mean, obviously, because I got my little military puppy, Sergeant Park. So,
it works perfectly for everything.
I know.
Wow.
Isn't that awesome? So I love dogs. So that's a cool thing. However, I also just think that people can reach out to their local chamber of commerce or their local governments. I made a really great connection here about a week and a half or so ago with the security manager on Camp Pendleton. And I just said, hey, I'm a military spouse. I know you don't know me. I'm also Mrs. California. And if you have any events that you already have to be at and you're just like, hey, who should we invite? Just call me. I'm here. I'm available. So sometimes it's just you go. Yeah, and I have a crown, and it's really pretty. So sometimes it's just networking and making those connections. And then they will help you and tell you, oh, we do have another event coming up, and maybe you should come.
And he's unsuccessful, and he's unsuccessful, and he's unsuccessful.
And finally, on Ms Congeniality, our queens share their hearts through their platforms.
One of the neatest parts of being in the pageant world is hearing about all of the different platforms that ladies have. Each of the ladies that I met when I was on the beauty journey, they not only shared with me their beauty secrets, but they shared with me their heart and the things that really meant a lot to them and the causes that they were standing behind. And these are things that I otherwise probably would have never even heard about, and it really helped me grow. So with that being said, we've asked our expert queens to share with you their platforms, and this is what they had to say.
But I've always been very interested in the condition of the food in our state.
Yeah.
In Mississippi, we are the fattest state in the nation year after year after year. And so if we can get healthier foods to the masses, it's really going to improve a lot of bad stuff that's going on in our state, including hospital bills going up, insurance prices going up, deaths on the rise. COVID happens to be much more dangerous for people who are obese. So if we can address those things on the front end, gosh, it will change so much for so many people. So I'm very passionate about that, and particularly in our homeless community, it is so very difficult for them to get their hands on fresh, healthy food. So I work a lot with Extra Table. That is an organization out of Hattiesburg, Mississippi, that their main focus is to get those whole, healthy foods into the hands of the homeless community and the food impoverished population.
So I've worked in early childhood education in that kind of area for 10 plus years. I've worked with Dolly Parton's Imagination Library, and they're an organization that helps get books in the hands of young learners. So children between the ages of birth and 5 can get 1 book a month mailed to them completely for free. It comes to them from Dolly Parton's Imagination Library, addressed straight to that child from Dolly Parton, and it's age appropriate, and it's a great resource for the parents to be able to encourage early childhood education and that love for learning and literacy kind of at the beginning of their child's journey in education. I'm a published children's book author. My children's book is titled Where There Is a Will, There Is a Way, and I think that kind of just like sums up my story in life. Everybody has hardships. Everybody has things that they have been through that are a bit more difficult, but Will, the little caterpillar in the book, goes through this journey of trying his best to turn into a butterfly, and he's unsuccessful, and he's unsuccessful, and he's unsuccessful, and he hears his mom's voice in his head saying, where there is a will, there is a way. And so in the end, he becomes this beautiful butterfly. And I think that that's the story that a lot of us have. That persistence is so incredibly important to success.
Well, my platform is called Voices. I educate people on how to use their voice in order to talk about their childhood trauma so that they can start the healing process, because that worked for me. And pageantry was so incredibly important for that. In 2020, when COVID hit and we all were quarantined, I knew, because I came from childhood sexual abuse, that if I was shut in, that it would trigger depression. And it's a very, very dangerous thing to be depressed and go through a trauma. So I decided to write my first book called What My Mother Never Knew, about what happened to me and how I healed through pageantry, therapy, my faith, and fitness and exercise. I really want women to understand, and men who have gone through it, that you can heal. You have the natural tools to heal. And that's something that I talk about constantly. I could be on a plane, and when people see that I'm a queen, they ask me about it. We talk about platforms, and I tell them about what happened to me. And I do it in a way where it's not, I don't want to bring people down. I want them to see the queen here, that I've gotten over it, I'm strong, I've healed, I'm continuing to heal. I talk about those days where I am depressed. So, but I know how to get out of it in a healthy and happy way, so.
Well, y'all, that's all the time we have left for this episode of Ms Congeniality, the making of a beauty queen. I hope you enjoyed it. In next week's episode, we're learning how to walk both on and off the stage. It's an episode dedicated to presentation, poise, and feeling confident in your skin.
You want to make an entrance. You do, and you can ask my husband. I'm always making an entrance.
Remember to love yourself, be yourself, and let's make this world a more beautiful place. Until next time, I am Ms Congeniality.